Wow. That's it. How did you ever do? That's one of the places where she's looking, and I think she's feels the best.
Jason asked me if I would do
What's up, Jason? Hey, good morning, Brandon. What's going on? How are you? How did you go to Scout last night? Yeah, we're not doing a camera. Okay. So that's good. And as a result of that, Cam is going to stay night with us Friday night. Yeah. So that's what I was about to say. If you didn't know this, no one sent me a text this morning. Okay. He said, I said, well, sure you can. I'm married. And what's left of real minutes? Oh, okay. You're going to break your camera.
I'll let you look at it. I'll probably crop it a little bit. Is that good? You want another one?
Yeah, can we do another one? I don't realize what I look like. Hey, Connor, how are you? Good. Yeah, are you on that? That's good. That's fine. That's perfect. Yeah, the second one. Yeah.
Don't get rid of this one.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. What did y'all do citizenship? Yeah, they were. Do you know what number that I don't know. I'm just telling them to do this before they get there. I think what Stacy said, she was thinking about some scary movies. Okay. I told her I was thinking about like Lord of the Rings. I love it. Yeah, I still haven't seen it. No. I'm thinking they would love it. Okay. And it's all right, well, maybe I'll talk to you. Maybe just. So you got it? Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to get all my stuff together. I'll sit down here for a second. 30 seconds. Has anybody else got help with the all right, so this is what I'll say about that. This is what I would say, and I'll follow you. If you don't want to say it, I'll be glad to say, hey, John's asked nice of me a few times. I know there's some golfers in here, and probably coming to you to ask for your help if nobody volunteers. What I've got to do is an opportunity on my team to volunteer. Guys who write checks for that too, as far as sponsoring the but somebody before. Yeah, there you go. Early is great. If you fill the tee boxes, you've got, that's how particularly successful. And I think that's why I heard about it for a couple of years was the other tournaments in town would have shotgun starts and split starts because they had like a morning and an afternoon because they had so many tees. Then people get others and we had 11. And we could have that. Right. And they're here. You just got to reach out and you can have, get your agency to sponsor a team and find 4 people that are worst case scenario, want a day off work, they'll be on the golf course or kick off. That's okay. That's okay. Still helps a good cause. What's up? Yes. Hey,
So I've been traveling like crazy the last 2 weeks. And I got your emails about the bell ringing. I think it was November 17th. Something like that.
Same day, like the
We do the bell ringing. To the mall and do it. If they wanted to do it, it wouldn't be a bad thing if they wanted to do it while they're, when people are walking in, and then we can just say, hey, we're kicking off, see John, just sign up, you know. That might not be a bad idea, but I don't want to make it an out there thing. But if they want to put a person out there ringing the bell, just saying, hey, the holidays are about to kick off. Let me check with the club and make sure they're cool. I'll have an answer to that. And that was George Bailey. Yeah, let me see if Newell is okay with his request. And hey, David, you were asking about the lights?
I was just gonna let you know, I like the fact, right, we've got his PowerPoint running through.
Yeah.
And I checked the live stream and it's all good. So.
Okay. So he's running through this computer.
Yes, that's kind of good to know for future.
But is the YouTube running separately?
Yeah, I checked it on my phone.
Okay.
Braves, man. Yeah, the live.
Okay, cool. All right, good deal. Thank you.
And I'll be the one to introduce Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, I was gonna do it, and then she showed up. Oh, yeah. Okay.
What we got there?
Make sure that everybody ties back to our mission, our goals, and stuff like that.
What's your community?
That's a great.
Hold on. Do you see us now?
We get into high 30s to low 40s.
Because we've been live for 15 minutes there.
And that might be just for Sundays or vaccines.
Hold on 1 second. Jason. This is Jake. We're live, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
He said he can't get his live. This is right there. But we're live.
Yeah, and we just checked it on the phone. It's running.
Jason said he just checked it on the phone. He said it's running.
Like I could see it, or Henry can see it.
Yeah, he said Henry could see it.
Maybe log out or.
Can you log out and log back in? Okay, all right. Okay, you're welcome. Okay, he's gonna log out and log back in. Okay. Okay, I'm not 54. But I asked Chad, any questions that I cannot do, because he is that guy. Yeah, he loves it. He loves it.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, good. Okay, so let me log out.
Yeah, I've got the list. And we're gonna plan another day to put this together. We can get the white centers.
Okay.
I'm not announcing that yet.
Okay. Yeah, I just want everybody to know, hey, give a positive, quick update.
Yeah.
Just make sure everybody knows, hey, I need 2 bullet points that says this is how good I'm doing.
Mr. President, how are you doing?
She's traveled a lot.
Get my picture, get my mug shot. Sister, get my mug Still right here, this bottle? Yeah. Okay, I gotta get to the book. And they took one, I took one to see. They took one, you know, they took one, I think, in the, you see the maybe the real small, but look big. I got
Thank you.
I think we should. This, last time was kind of an anomaly. We just had one person sit down. I think that we might be getting back up there to the into the 40s, especially with vaccine and mask kind of changing the guidance. I think people are getting a little more comfortable. So yeah, let's just shoot for 12. Yep. Thanks. Welcome to the Rotary Club of LaGrange. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation today by Sandra Chapman. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sandra?
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for so richly blessing this country, state, and community. We are so undeserving of these blessings as it seems we have become lost in your direction. Nonetheless, help us be mindful of your blessings as we seek to bless others with that which you have granted us. Rotarians worldwide acknowledge your power and your expectation that we be of service to mankind. Let us renew our obligation to fulfill that expectation with a new commitment to help others in our community, our nation, and our world. With the power, influence, and wealth that we as leaders in this place most certainly have, let us also remember that these are a blessing from you, that charity is more fulfilling than decadence, and the golden rule a much richer yardstick than any bank account. Amen.
Well said. Thank you, Sandra. Now, we can introduce our visitor guest, Cheryl Mack.
Good afternoon. Well, we don't have any visitors, but we still have Mrs. Taylor Ferguson. Pending membership, she will be inducted October 27th, so I'm just asking everyone to be here. She's been here for a while now.
Yes. Patience is a virtue.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you. All right, now for some birthdays and anniversaries. Let's see. Remember birthdays: Curtis Brown on October 22nd. And anniversaries: Larry Brack, 7 years on October 22nd. Connie Hensler, 15 years on the 25th. And Ken Miles, 8 years on the 23rd. So congratulations on those. And we do have just a few announcements before we get started. Just please be reminded to silence your cell phones in respect for our speaker today. And be reminded that our district governor will be our program next week, so she'll be visiting us. A couple of reminders about that, please, when she's introduced. Out of respect, we will all stand for her. when she's introduced, and then any Rotary pins, attendance pins, fellowship pins. Please wear those as a good show. She'll want to introduce, or she'll want to meet as many people as possible when we're walking in, so be prepared to say hello to her when she gets here. Also, this week, October 24th is World Polio Day, and I think you have some information on your tables about that. We're down to 2 countries in the world where they're fighting polio, Afghanistan and Pakistan, so you can kind of see why we're not getting in there to treat that, but we're close, and we are taking up donations for that. Barbara, you can give her cash or check, you can Venmo, or you can add it to your next Rotary statement for that. And that is what our district governor, Mary Ligon, has asked. Instead of gifts, is that we make a donation to Polio Plus in her name. On top of that, right now, the Gates Foundation will add another $2 for every $1 that we donate. So $1 equals $3 in that fight right now. So in the next week or so, let's get any donations to Barbara. It'd be nice to present a bigger check than a smaller check next week. So just have that in mind. Also, this week is the 3rd Thursday of the month. We are not having our regularly scheduled board meeting this week. We'll have it next week with Mary. So no board meeting this week for those that would regularly attend or make up. And then John Harrell has one more announcement.
Back to cards on the table again for the same thing. This year's golf tournament, our annual fundraiser. We're trying to plan far enough ahead. I need some volunteers to help with that planning and to look at some of the feasibility. But I put 2 things on the table. One is to volunteer. Please, I need some people to think this over with. The other, if you're not up to volunteering, that one says sponsor. We're gonna need, if we want a successful tournament, we need 72 people on the course. We need to fill every tee box with 4 people. So if you have an organization that wants to sponsor a team, or if you would like to sponsor a team individually, please let me know. If you want to go ahead and fill one of these out, leave it on the table, and I'll pick them up at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And John brings up a good point. I think the reason we haven't had as much success with the golf tournament the last few years is not having as many golfers that we could have, or as many sponsors that we could have. And so we're kind of looking at, if we can get a full house on both of those tickets, it should be a good return and a good fundraiser for us. And we won't have to go back to the drawing board on how to raise some money for our club. So talk to John if you're interested in that. If we don't have anybody, I know there's some golfers in here that we could call on to help. I know there's some folks that have organizations that could sponsor or get teams together that we could call on. So we'll give everybody the opportunity to volunteer first. We do got a couple minutes if anybody has any happy dollars, anything to add to the kitty this week. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you to everybody already helping with the polio fundraiser. Also, I'm giving another $1 because we talked about the golf tournament, and yeah, we don't make bundles and bundles of money with it, but it's really a super nice day for fellowship. And the different teams interact, we have volunteers working, and it's just a great day. So please consider being part of it. Thank you.
The Gardner-Newman football team, middle school football team, won the county championship last week, meaning they have beaten Callaway and Long Cane to claim the regular season championship. Sandra's son Heath is one of the assistant coaches on the team. My oldest Julian's on the team, who had 2 interceptions and 1 for a touchdown last week. So congratulations.
I have to acknowledge all the obsessive compulsives in the room who will feel better now because I do this. Not so sure. Anyway, yeah, it's nice.
It's fun to sit out there and see that, isn't it, George? I get it. Anybody else?
Jason, you just lean to the left.
I lean to the right. All right, so now Henry Jacobs, I'll have you introduce the program.
Right. I'm excited to introduce today's program presented by Mark Wally. Mark is, for one, uncle, family, friend. So, you know, it's just exciting to get to have him here for that reason, among many other things. But, you know, he's here to share about his work with Forest Investment Associates. And, you know, this is a company that is working around the country, around the world now, really kind of pushing sustainable forestry. Mark started with FIA in 1994, and he currently serves as the president. He was executive vice president and director of timberland management for 8 years, and was the Northern Region management manager for 5 years prior to becoming the president. He's the chairman of the executive and investment committees and a member of the board of directors. Mark is married to his wife, Penny. They've been married 36 years, and I always get to see each other at the family reunions. 2 daughters, 3 grandkids. And he graduated from Auburn University in 1985 with a Bachelor of Science in Forestry, and previously worked at a Scott Paper Company in Alabama. And being an Auburn guy, he's affiliated with the Society of American Foresters at Auburn University, and I know he's involved a lot with that program at Auburn University. He's also on the Green Space Advisory Committee for the city of Milton, just north of Atlanta. He's the chairman of the Longleaf Alliance for the board of directors, and on the board of directors for the National Alliance of Forest Owners. So, Mark, I'm excited for you to share with us more about forestry and investing and how that can help us all. So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Henry, very much. I appreciate the invitation. It's for me to be here at the Family Connection. I would be in this if I didn't say how important that was to me. So great to see Henry stepping up here as the program chair for the Range Rotary Club. If it's okay, can y'all hear me if I step out here? Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Well, I am a forester. My career path took a little different twist than a traditional forester. Coming out of college in the mid '80s, and you know, sometimes fate has a way of dealing you a funny hand. My office now is on the 12th floor of an office building in Buckhead, and I look at the Atlanta skyline, which is not what I expected to do when I was in forestry school. But I want to tell you a little bit about our business and what we do and what I do, and just hopefully raise some awareness about forestry and timberland investing and some things like that. So, Henry, if you want to. Yeah. So kind of 3 things I wanted to cover. I want to give you a snapshot of our firm, our business, our company, what it is that we do, and then spend a few minutes talking about really kind of the key investment characteristics of timberland. And we look at that as a separate asset class. And then I want to highlight some really interesting things that's going on in the carbon world, in the natural climate solution world. Lots of energy and enthusiasm about sort of natural climate solutions to folks that are concerned about the greenhouse gas effect. And regardless of where your views are on global warming, and I know there's a lot of political noise associated with that. It's, we're seeing a lot of interest in forestry really to try to address that. So just wanted to spend a little time touching on that as well. I'm happy to take any questions as we go. If you got something that you want to just, you know, dig into a little further, let me know. I can take some questions at the end as well. So, all right, Henry. So our company is Forest Investment Associates. We're also known as FIA. We are a registered investment advisor. We're regulated by the SEC. That's not the Southeastern Conference. That's the Securities Exchange Commission. So the feds come and you know, knock on our door every 4 or 5 years and want to make sure that we're operating as a fiduciary for our clients' assets and managing it appropriately. But, you know, if I had to say in one word what it is that we do, we acquire and manage forest land on behalf of large institutional investors, mostly tax-exempt investors, pension funds, foundations, university endowments, and so forth. And I thought I would share a few, just to kind of give you an idea about our assets and kind of our operational footprint, so to speak. I don't know how well y'all can see that, but we talk about acres that we manage as you know, in the land management business and as a forester. But what our clients are really interested in is the dollars and the value, what kind of return is being generated from that investment. So right now we have about $4.3 billion of assets under management, and that's in the way of timberland that we've acquired on behalf of our clients. That amounts to a little over 2 million acres all over the country, 16 states in the U.S., and then we also operate in South America, Chile and Brazil, with some investments down there as well. And the way we work, so we're not a retail investor. We don't have thousands of clients. We've got a couple dozen clients. And they're these large institutions. We have 24 of those, and we refer to those as separate accounts. So if you're a pension fund from New York State and you're looking to diversify your portfolio of assets, you might hire us to help you do that. That's just an example of the kind of investors that we work with. We also, from time to time, will commingle smaller investors because our ticket size for a new account is about $100 million. And if there are folks that might have, you know, you want to put in 10, you commingle 10 of those and put it in a limited partnership. That's a little bit of a different structure. But that's really sort of the way our assets are organized. To give you a little flavor about kind of our transactions and some what I call forest management metrics. We've been in business for 35 years, and we've acquired about 250 different deals or transactions where we've gone out to the market, spent our clients' money, and acquired 50,000 acres from Weyerhaeuser or International Paper Company or a private landowner company in Georgia that will sell their land base to us. We've done out of those 246, we have had what we call a round trip investment on about 90 of those, 88 we owned it. We're in the business of managing sustainably for the long term. We're not buying and flipping and cutting timber and running away from it. So our oldest client is a family from Chicago that was in the pharmaceutical business, sold out to Monsanto, made a couple $2 billion and hired us in 1986, and they're still with us. So it's a testament to really kind of the commitment that the right sort of investor makes in owning and managing timberland and working with a firm like us. When you own 2 million acres of timberland, there's always going to be some pieces, some outlying parcels. A local landowner next door might want to buy that from you, and they'll pay you a higher price than the value of holding and managing for the long term. So we have a fairly active, what we call a retail land sales program, and have done about 780 of those sales over the course of our history. We're planting trees, millions of trees every year. We planted, I think this year, at the end of this year, it's going to be close to 500 million trees, so 500 million trees, all over, 20 states in the U.S. as well as down in South America. And then something that we've been really monitoring and paying more attention to and understanding the dynamics of in the past 2-3 years is the carbon stores, the carbon sequestration, the carbon substitution and what timber and trees are doing, to help decarbonize the world. So last year, just in the US alone, we sequestered 12 million equivalent tons of CO2. And those are numbers that clients and investors these days are really starting to pay more attention to. So it's kind of adding a different kind of value to being a landowner, forest manager. So that's really interesting. And then our staff, just our people, we have 54 employees. About half of those are foresters. We also have folks in business development, accounting, finance, and so forth. We have 6 offices. Our headquarters are in Atlanta. We also have offices in Northwest Pennsylvania, a little town called Smithport, Statesboro, Georgia, Jackson, Mississippi, Vancouver, Washington, right across the Columbia River from Portland, Oregon, and then in Santiago, Chile, and Sao Paulo, Brazil. So we're an employee-owned company. We take a lot of pride in that. It's kind of neat to control our own destiny. We've been very successful, and we attribute a lot of that success to just the way our ownership is structured. Okay. So this is just what I call our portfolio footprint. You sort of see where our operations are. We don't own all that land. That just represents the counties where we have invested and have operations. So you can see the furthest north, we've got a little bit of land in Vermont, quite a bit in Northwest Pennsylvania, throughout the Southeast. The Southeast is the timber basket of the world. And, in Georgia and many of the other southern states, forestry and forest products are significant contributors to the economy. In Georgia, it's a $30 billion a year contribution to the state's GDP. Forest products are the largest category of products that are exported out of the port of Savannah. So it's a huge business. And Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, the other states in the Southeast have significant forest industry and lots of private land, lots of private land ownership. Georgia has more private timberland than any other state in the country. So instead of the peach state, we ought to be called the pine trees. Our biggest state is Texas. There's in East Texas, significant forest land base there. And then we're out in the Pacific Northwest on the west side of the Cascades, which is highly productive timber growing region, beautiful part of the world. And then in South America, we're in 3 states in South America, as well as in Chile. So different kinds of trees, different kinds of forests, and those different geographies. In the south, it's primarily southern yellow pine. In the northeast, up in Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, high quality hardwoods like black cherry, sugar maple, red oak, those species that are valued for their appearance and go into floors and furniture and tables and cabinets and things of that nature. And in the Pacific Northwest, again, a different kind of tree, Douglas fir primarily, super high quality, structural lumber comes out of Doug fir. Big export market to China, to Japan, to Vietnam, to the Pacific Rim. So the global economy probably affects those markets out there a little bit more than here in the South. Okay, Henry. So people frequently, and years ago, it's not as much of a missionary effort as it was 20 years ago to explain, why would you want to invest in timber? What are the investment characteristics of timber? Just looking at it kind of as an asset class, kind of from a financial point of view. And these are really the punchlines. First of all, it's a real asset. You can touch it, you can hold it, you can hug it, you can go out on your land and look at it and enjoy the other benefits of it. But the main thing that makes timber kind of really cool and unique is that trees grow. And the biological growth doesn't happen fast, but over a long period of time, it's very predictable and it's very certain. And as trees get larger, they typically get more valuable. So their value grows faster than the volume. We like to say that trees don't read the Wall Street Journal. They might become the Wall Street Journal, but they don't read it. And the point there is that, timberland, forest land, land in general, the performance, the valuation of that is really kind of immune to economic events. So, you have a blow up in Afghanistan, or, China starts to play ugly with, with their trade relations. you know, the trees are just kind of sitting there and growing, and we're managing it, and there's certain things that you can do as a professional forest manager to enhance that growth, and that's really what we focus on. You know, there's a what we call an option value with harvesting timber, and we do, you know, we're harvesting all the time, we're replanting all the time, but unlike soybeans or corn or cotton or other agricultural crops, you have to harvest those every year. So you're a price taker essentially. In timber, you know, when it is mature, financially mature, whenever you think it's ready to harvest, if you don't like the way the market is, then you can wait, and that's huge value to have that optionality of being able to wait for a better price.
Mark,
Yes,
do
ma'am.
you do the harvesting yourself or do you contract?
We don't do the harvesting ourselves. We would, when it's time to have a harvest, and say we got 80 acres over in Talbot County, we've got a big tract, what we will do is normally our foresters sort of will, you know, build a business plan around the management of that property, and then we would either bid it, we would send out prospectus to local buyers, sawmills, and paper companies and so forth, accept bids on the timber, or we might negotiate something if we want to go that way. But we would then sell that, the right for them to harvest it, sign a contract with them, usually a year, and then they pay us, you know, about the terms of the contract. We supervise that, but we're not liking ourselves. We would follow up to do the site preparation and the reforestation of the plant later. Yeah. Now we have 54 employees, but if we were kind of a vertically integrated company, we would probably have 500, I would say. Last 2 points, you know, timberland is not correlated. The performance, the investment return is not correlated with, you know, traditional sort of financial assets, it's not marketed with NASDAQ, what have you. And that's one of the benefits of just, you know, putting, you know, my mom always said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And, you know, that's what we do with timber. So you got an investor who's got $1 billion, and they might want to put 5% in timber. So, you know, they put 50 million in it. And it's a little bit for them. It's a lot for us. But the way the markets behave, those are not correlated. That's important to the investor. It is correlated long-term with inflation. So in periods of we've had high inflation in this country, timberland is definitely positively correlated. So it's a good inflation hedge. Okay. Just a sort of a snapshot of the what we call the investable universe of where the commercial forest regions are around the world. The United States, sort of front and center here, it's the biggest producer of forest products and has the most sophisticated and advanced forest management in the world, but there are a lot of other places that have, you know, high quality forests. And I would speak specifically to South America, Chile and Brazil in particular. New Zealand is a tiny country, but a huge producer of logs for the Chinese market, and they export primarily raw logs. Australia in the Southern Triangle there, in sort of the southeast corner of Australia, has a pretty significant forest industry as well. So when we're thinking about being a forest owner, we're looking at these areas we can invest in, and also trying to understand kind of the global wood flow, where the demand and supply is coming from, and it helps us operate our business a little bit better.
What about the Canadian area? It seems like there are huge forests there. Are they just not tapping?
That's a great question. So there is a huge forest resource in Canada, and but 96% of it is owned by the Canadian government, by the provincial government. They do have a real active forest products industry. You know, tons of sawmills, lots of land that they have managed, and, you know, high quality forests. They were British Columbia in particular, which produces about half of the softwood lumber that comes out of Canada, mostly imports that to the United States, was decimated by a little critter called the mountain pine beetle, and they've really been struggling with that. So, yeah, if you follow any of the sort of the industrial expansion in the Southeast, many of the Canadian sawmill companies have opened operations in the U.S. because their supply had been hit pretty hard by this pine beetle. So you can't really be you can't be a private landowner. There's not anything there essentially to acquire because the government owns it all. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to give an example of kind of two of these are actual clients of ours, and just give you a little bit of an idea of how we build a portfolio. If somebody hires us and commits a certain dollar amount to us, we're not going to go invest that all in one place. We're going to try to diversify that a little bit, for a couple reasons. One, just sort of natural risk. There are fires and windstorms and insects and, things like that are something you have to manage and mitigate. So we'll try to spread out geographically a little bit, get some exposure to different, as far as species, tree species, because there are different markets for those. And then also kind of the age class distribution of the forest. So in this case, we have a client that has about $150 million of investment, and we've acquired 7 properties for them, all over the world. We intentionally here weighted it to the southeast, and that's where the majority of the commercial forest land and the natural forest land in the country is located. And then we've got just a small sliver up in the northeast, and a little larger piece out in the Pacific Northwest. So those sizes range from maybe 5,000 to 10,000 acres. So that's typical of our strategy. We're trying to build a diversified portfolio as we're placing that capital. And you can't do it all at one time. It normally takes 2 or 3 years if you're trying to spend that much money to make those sort of investments. So it requires some patience and diligence in how you go about that. Okay. So then this is another example. This is a much larger account that we started sort of building their portfolio in 2012 after they hired us. They had a little bit of a different risk appetite, and so a little bit over half of their capital was spent in South America, in Brazil and in Chile. Both countries have phenomenal forest industry, really, really high quality forest resource. Brazil is a little harder to do business in. It's got a world-class forest products industry, phenomenal educational institutions to train professional foresters and natural resource professionals. They're the largest producer of pulp in the world. Most of it's exported. Brazil is a big country. It's over 200 million people there. But when you step out of the United States and start doing business in other parts of the world, it can be a little bit more challenging. So you just need to understand sort of the risk profile there. So in exchange for taking on a little higher risk, you would expect a little bit of a higher return. When you go out of the United States, the returns that we shoot for in the US are about 5% real. So add a couple of points maybe for inflation, and you're looking at making an investment and holding it for 30 or 40 years, generating a 6 or 7% real rate or nominal rate of return. You go to Brazil, you probably should add 3% to that, so maybe 9%. Chile is a little more friendly, more business friendly, a little easier to operate, so maybe a point higher than what you would expect in the U.S. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So this is something that's really different, and I think it's as a person who's spent a lot of time outdoors and who grew up understanding that. My mom was a biology major, and she did her master's when I was an 8th grader, and she traipsed us around the woods and fields and forests of East Tennessee, and I can probably credit her with really sort of getting my interest in the natural world and natural resources and working outside in forestry. I credit her. And then Daddy had us working on the farm outside all the time. But Mom and a lot of foresters, but there's this the sustainability aspect of trees and forests is really, really cool. And there's this growing interest in, how can forests help mitigate the effects of greenhouse gas? And we know that, if you remember from 10th grade biology class, the process of photosynthesis, takes water and carbon dioxide, turns it into oxygen and wood, and there's some neat things that can be done with that. So we are starting to get a lot of interest from these large institutions. If you read anything in the news these days about companies that are setting these, net carbon zero impact statements, they want to decarbonize their business operations. They want to, they want to think about sort of ecosystem services and how they can be a friendlier contributor to the global economy. They're turning to us and companies like us to help them do that. So the last piece of new business that we got just recently is a large European pension fund who is interested in investing in timberland for sort of the typical reasons that I've talked about before. They've also said, we want to hire you to acquire forest land, primarily in the United States, but we want you to maintain a certain stocking of carbon in the forest. So they want to maintain 220,000 tons of carbon in their forest, and then beyond that, we'll continue to manage it, sort of in a traditional manner. But there's a tremendous amount of interest and enthusiasm about that option going forward. So we think about carbon and building with wood, and there's sort of the 3 S's: sequestration, so we're removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. We're storing it in the form of carbon in the trees that are in the trees right out here on the golf course. Storing it in harvested wood products. So there's a whole new, it's really a new sort of discipline of carbon accounting and understanding the life cycle analysis of what happens when you harvest a tree, because you're still, if you're making wood floors out of it or building a cabinet, putting it in 2x4s, there's still the benefit of sequestering and storing that carbon. And then the substitution effect. It's much more environmentally friendly to build with wood than it is carbon and steel. Steel and concrete. And I don't have anything against steel and concrete. But when you think about the energy required to produce concrete, the energy required to produce steel, the net effect of that is additional CO2 emitted into the atmosphere. The environmental benefits of working with wood and building with wood are significant. One of my daughters just finished her master's in architecture at Georgia Tech, and one of the classes they had was all about carbon accounting and how, what are the trade-offs building with wood as opposed to building with steel and concrete. So really interesting, and seeing that integrated into some of the, the younger minds that are being educated in sort of the design and build world was really kind of neat. Okay. And then this is, I think this is the last slide I've got. And I wanted to spend a minute talking about, is related to carbon, related to the same thing I was speaking about there, but ESG, and if you follow any of the sort of the, some of the investment thematics that are going on among institutional investors and large corporations all around the world, is this ESG, which stands for environmental, social, and governance. And the notion is that companies and investors that sort of elevate those 3 items as significant in the way they think about making an investment, or running their business, the governance side, or how they engage with rural communities in the South or native communities outside the U.S. There is a new demand for that, and the environmental side of that is pretty straightforward for forestry. We know the natural world pretty well, but that is attracting a fair amount of interest and capital to the asset class as well. So those are, I wanted to highlight that carbon and the natural climate solution aspect because it's new, it's interesting, and it's kind of, we think about trees and forests and land as a bundle of rights. And what we're seeing with some of this interesting carbon and environmental aspects is sort of pulling a stick away at a time and say, well, you know what? Not only is forestry a good investment, and owning forest land has, some of those benefits that I've just described, but it also is our main filtration system for water supply. I mean, Henry talked about that with Chattahoochee River, and we know that good streamside management techniques help enhance water quality, and soil production, soil quality as well. All of the land that we own, the 2 million acres, are leased to hunting and fishing and recreation clubs, and folks want to go out the woods and watch birds and so forth. So there's lots of different aspects of what comprises the value of a forest that is becoming more understood, and folks are more interested in kind of being exposed to that now than they used to. So it's pretty neat business. The intersection between forestry and finance and business is just completely fascinating to me, and I've been fortunate to be kind of part of this. So anyway, that's we've got one more slide there at the end. I'd be happy to any questions, comments. Yes, sir.
Regarding the carbon sequestration, are there certain types of trees that are better than others? For example, are softwoods better than hardwoods because they grow faster, or the other way around? And then regarding the age of the tree, does it grow more slowly at a certain age, and it doesn't sequester as much carbon? And then also, what would be the typical carbon sequestration per year for a typical acre of pine?
Well, to answer your first question, yes, there's definitely a difference between softwoods and hardwoods. Softwoods are typically going to grow a little bit faster, and the sequestration of carbon in actually hardwoods is a little higher. So there's sort of if carbon is your goal, there's a little bit of a trade-off there. Any tree sort of grows on a sigmoidal curve, so it starts out slow, speeds up, and then essentially levels off. There's loblolly pine out there behind us. Well, they'll live to be 120 years old or so. They're just growing more slowly. So, if you're trying to maximize your return, you probably want to focus on that part of the slope. And then your last question was, what's the? Yeah, I'd have to get back to you on that. I know you guys wanted to adjourn at 1 o'clock. I think we're pretty much on at 1. I'm happy to answer any more questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. Yes, sir.
Well, last question, can you give us some insight into the volatility of lumber prices and constraints in the last 5 years or so? I was reading that people who had invested in timberlands for their retirement, all of a sudden were getting really low.
Yeah. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal a while back that was featured very prominently about a timber grower in Mississippi, I think, and lots of folks did, plant trees in the mid '80s. What happened is we've gotten really good at growing timber, especially in the South. So the supply right now is at an all-time high. The demand is still good, but there's kind of a supply overhang. So timber prices in the South, anyway, they're stable, but they're nowhere near as high as they used to be. Valuations have stayed up because the demand for the asset is still high. But if you're selling, some timber off your personal property, I don't expect that those prices are going to change material over the next, 5 years or so. But it's a supply demand function. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yep. Uncle Bob.
If you look at the whole world, is there a net gain forest land year over year or net loss?
There's been a net in the United States. There's definitely been a net gain, but all in all, it's remained pretty even. I mean, you lose just as an example, in the South American rainforest, a lot of those rainforests are being converted to ag production. But on the other hand, you've got areas that are, once sort of fringe ag and farmland that's being put back into forestry. So it's kind of I would say there's no shortage of trees. The United States has, more forest today than we did, in pre-colonial times. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
That's fascinating. I think we could sit here all day and talk about that. There's a ton of questions for that. Thank you for being here. In honor of your speaking today, we're going to make a donation to Polio Plus, which is Rotary's initiative to rid the world of polio. So thank you for that. Next week will be our district governor, so it'd be nice to fill this room up. I've asked him to bring a couple more tables. Let's ask him that we need more tables. So let's have a good showing next week. And then after that, Henry, are you going to keep bringing your family? It's been fantastic. I love them. My family reunions are not this interesting. So, thank you for everything. Yeah, thank you for this. It's been great. Remember, you can still make a donation to Barbara for Polio Plus that we can give next week. And if nothing else, we're adjourned.